Absolutely, absolutely. There's something about holding an old book in your hand. Absolutely.
How did you end up creating and releasing the crazy, insane videos on YouTube and DVD? I've been keeping up with those, as you know.
Yes, and thank you. I appreciate you keeping up with them. That is a labor of love. It is a joy. I feel inspired to do them. They do allow me to explore many creative talents that I've got, both as a writer, a director, a producer, the editing itself, the putting together of them. It is the direction that I do want to go in. I personally, of course I'm biased because I create it, but I personally think that the content is unique and interesting. I have several storylines going. Of course, I would like for, some big Hollywood producer or somebody to come along and notice it and make me an offer I can't refuse or whatever. But, nevertheless, if that never happens, I can be like these small independent filmmakers, and there's many of them all over the world who submit their films to film festivals such as Sundance, and there's other film festivals as well. And they may never achieve fortune with their work, but they do achieve critical respect from other directors and from other creative people who recognize what they're doing and understand the artistic level that they're achieving, and even the concepts and the ideas and the way in which they're exploring them. And if I never get anything other than that, if I never achieve anything other than fan reaction from my YouTube viewers and from the people who buy the DVD edition, which I have now released, I will be satisfied with that. Of course, it would be great if I can achieve eventually some type of commercial success with it, but if not, I'm not going to be disappointed. I will continue to make the episodes. I will continue to do it because it is a joy. Other than running and operating this bookstore, which I've done for the better part of 40 years now, there's nothing else that quite approaches the level of satisfaction that I received from doing that. I am engrossed and involved in it, and I'm in the same way whenever I've been writing a book, and I've written, a couple of free books. The one that's published, of course, is an e-book, is the one about eBay, but I've done a lot of fiction work, and in fact, the original script work that the Crazy Insane Radio is evolving out of is about a 300-page script that I began writing way back in 1992. And a lot of these characters are straight from that and are evolving and developing and going in all sorts of wonderful directions, and I'm really having a blast with it.
What are some of the storylines, and how many more seasons will it go?
I think, Terry, that I'm going to continue with it just ad infinitum as far as seasons go, because it does have an infinite number of potential storylines that can open up into the future, because they have so many characters going, and new characters get introduced in each season, of course. The main storyline so far, in season one, I began, of course, there was a shooting of Senator Quint. One of the backstories had been the scandal involving the Vincini Cosmetics, in which the CEO, Gigi Vincini, had been accused during a Senate hearing of having put a low-level acid in the face cream, and thousands of women's faces had been scarred, and there had been this huge class action lawsuit against Vincini based on the tainted face cream. And if you'll recall, in season one, of course, Senator Quint is slain. He's killed. And that's one storyline. Of course, the assassin just got arrested a couple of weeks back in an episode in the late second season. It's when they finally capture the assassin himself. There is, of course, the Murgatroyd serial killer storyline, and that's been going since very early in season 1, too. And the history of that within Murgatroyd, the fictional universe of Murgatroyd City, the serial killings have now been going on for 4 years. He remains unidentified, unapprehended. There's, rampant speculation as to who it could be, but nobody knows for sure. There have been 21 victims so far. And that is a key and main storyline right there. Another storyline, of course, that has evolved as a sort of a side an offshoot of that is the kidnapping of Dr. Hubert Slakowski, the televangelist minister and father of Murgatroyd Times news columnist Imogen Slakowski, who also is a sort of a commentator anchorwoman, editorialist, also there at CRZY News as well. And she, of course, is a misogynist. You know, she's a very different. Well, I should say she's a man hater. She hates everybody, but she particularly hates men. And she has a lot of rants, and her column is very biased against men. And she started taunting the Murgatroyd serial killer, and of course now he's begun to target her through threats and so on and so forth. That's the storyline. Now, a key central storyline, of course, is Flashy the Paper Doll. She was introduced in episode 19, and she is, in fact, a living, breathing, walking life form, an artificially created life form created in a biotech lab from human DNA and from wood pulp. The origins as to who's behind that lab, I've kept that so far relatively secret, though I'm beginning to drop some hints, toward the end of the third season. Of course, everybody wants to know where she comes from. There's another creature, the wood pulp boy, who was also created by that same lab, and the two of them are currently on the run because government agents and authorities are after them, in our present day. And there's this divided camps. There's the people who think she's just terrible and are against her, and then she's got her supporters, the skateboarders that have rallied for her support, and a young man running for the Flame Senator Quint's son, Anderson Quint Jr., and he supports her rights. He believes she has human rights too because she has human DNA. And so I have characters rooting for her, and then I've got characters that are completely against her, and so that's going on as well.
How did you come up with the idea of Flashy?
You're going to love that one. When I was a child, about 4 or 5, my mom used to get McCall magazine, and there were these little paper dolls, these little cutouts. And whenever my friends would come over, boys and girls both, we just loved going into the McCall's magazine. Somebody grabbed a pair of scissors and cut out the little doll and put the dolls on it. I watched this and saw this and was amused by it, as a child. Of course, I like to cut everything out. I like advertisements. I like cartoons. I collected everything. I collected the Dick Tracy comic strip as a kid for years and years and years. Used to keep notebooks of them. So I've always been fascinated by comic art and by artwork. And she sprung out of that. I also had a gigantic comic book collection as a kid as well. And so there's definitely the animated influence going there, I guess, all the way back from my childhood.
Yeah, that's really very interesting. Let's see. Can you describe some of the characters? I guess you already did describe a lot of the characters in your series.
Well, there may be more, and sure, I can go into any of them that you'd like. Sure.
Well, can you describe the creative process a little bit? How do you come up with all these different characters and scenarios? And
it's funny, and I think for different writers, because the idea begins in the mind, whether it was Ray Bradbury or Rod Serling with The Twilight Zone or Alfred Hitchcock directing, whatever. Robert Bloch, who wrote the original paperback for Psycho, which became the film that Hitchcock directed. The movie The Birds was based on a short story by Daphne du Maurier, and she's known for a lot of romantic-type gothics. Everything starts as a creative idea in someone's head, usually as a story or a novel. Margaret Mitchell spent a long time writing Gone with the Wind, never knowing that it would hit and become a success, never realizing it would become this huge, phenomenal movie, which it became. And that is so true of so many great works. Harper Lee, who did To Kill a Mockingbird, lived in a little town in Mississippi. He was friends with Truman Capote, who was from that same town, and also became a writer. And a lot of these creative ideas, I think some people are just naturally more creative, and I think that it is some of it comes in sparks. It might be from the subconscious mind. I lean very heavily toward that. I think that we get to thinking about something, or maybe we hear something in the news. That's what Stephen King said on CBS this morning the other day when Gayle King and Charlie Rose and some of the others were interviewing him. he said it can be anything. It can be something that I hear in the news. It can be a dream. It can be an event that happened in my childhood. But it will spark a short story or a novel in my mind, and I will use that event as the starting point or as the central point around which the story will develop or evolve. In fact, he talks about Cujo, which you may recall that movie and that book. Cujo is about this great big old fluffy, I can't think of the name of the dog, but you will in a minute. I'm sure one of us will. Those big fluffy dogs. And he went to some man's house out in the country one time to see about a car part or to see about getting a car fixed or whatever. And this seemingly friendly, innocuous dog just all of a sudden charged him and tried to bite him. And the owner came out and said, he's like that. You know, if he doesn't know you or doesn't like you, he'll do that. And, I mean, this is, you know, the fluffy dog, the kind of dog you saw in the movie Benji, that type of thing. And Stephen King made Cujo out of it. He basically has this dog that becomes rabid and terrorizes.
But the dog in the movie is one of those great big huge dogs.
Yes,
I can't remember the name of the breed, but they'll take up the entire bed of a truck. They're that big. I've seen them.
Exactly.
They're that big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
actually monsters. They're just monster dogs.
Yes, they are. And actually encountering one that was mean like that was the inspiration for Stephen King to come up with the book Cujo and then with the movie. And so I'm sure subconsciously a lot of what I'm creating is inspired by one thing or another. I can't always pinpoint it and point directly to a certain thing. I mean, Senator Quint's assassination may loosely be similar to JFK or to Robert Kennedy's assassination. You know, there's obviously some similarities because the high-powered rifle was used, this sort of thing. Obviously, serial killers have been all over the news for the past 30 or 40 years, and there have been a lot of them. You know, Ted Bundy being the one that most immediately springs to mind. Paper Doll, that is somewhat unique and very original on my part. I can't say any specific thing other than that childhood memory we talked about earlier really inspired her. But I think all of these things we draw upon our deep subconscious. I think creative people draw upon their subconscious without even being aware of it for so much of this stuff that we create. That would be my speculation based on my own experience.